So welcome everyone. We're going to talk today about 10 ways that you can help your clients get unstuck if they're feeling stuck. And as I was just starting to say there, I know this is a really hot topic. It's a challenging topic for health coaches, for new health coaches. Maybe you have a client who hasn't gotten started yet. They're stuck getting started. Maybe they're gone part way through and now they're stuck. They're stalling out. Maybe they're stuck in their heads. So there are lots of different ways that our clients can be stuck. So, and I was saying before, this can be really, really frustrating for new health coaches. It can be really discouraging. It can be really frustrating. It can be disappointing because we blame ourselves. We think, I'm not effective as a health coach. I can't help them. They're not seeing results. It must be all my fault. So we get into that blame game and we start to blame ourselves. So I'm just picking up my notes here. So you can start to feel like you're not doing your job as a coach, that you're ineffective, and that you really can't help your client. So overall, when your client is stuck, when you're feeling like you're not being able to help them, it really does make you sort of question your role and your skills as a coach, and that can be really disheartening as you're just getting started. So I will say right off the bat that I know what this feels like. I've been there many times, and I'm actually there right now with a client that I'm working with. She's really stuck. She understands her vision. She has a clear picture of where she wants to be in the future and what that vision could bring to her life and all the benefits in it. She understands the risks of staying the same. So if she doesn't change and she doesn't move on, she understands those risks as well. But she's really stuck in how she's going to get started. So I'm actually using a lot of these tips that I'm going to share with you today with this current client to help her move through this phase of being stuck. So I really do think that it is our job as coaches to really be with our clients around this piece, around being stuck, to help them notice it, to help them understand it, to help them explore it, so that they can learn from, why they're stuck. What are these challenging issues that are going on? So they can learn from all of that and grow so that, when you're no longer working together, they've developed that self-efficacy, they've developed, ways that they can move through these challenging times, because they're going to come back. They're always going to be there. So this list that I'm going to share with you today, these 10 tips, and actually I have 12 tips. So I have 2 bonus tips that I want to share with you at the end because there is just too much good stuff. These I've really developed throughout my years of training, all the courses that I've gone through, and of course just through my own practical experience coaching. And so I think I draw on these tips all the time. I really have embedded them really into my coaching process and methodology. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I hope that these are going to be some helpful tips for you. So as I said, I've got 10, actually 12 tips that I want to share with you today. And these are really ways that you can support your client when they're feeling stuck. I will say that each one of these 12 tips could probably be their own separate Facebook Live. So if there are any of these in particular that you'd really like me to dive into further, just post that in the comments and I'd be happy to do, a Facebook Live in the future, sort of digging into any of these that you'd like me to expand on. So for now, for today, I'm going to go over them fairly quickly. I'm not going to go into each one in too much depth, but I really want you to have a sense of what these strategies are so that you can maybe explore them in your own coaching and explore them and maybe do a little bit more research on them if you like. So post any questions as we go along in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And I really hope, and my aim is that once you have these strategies in your toolbox, in your coaching toolkit, that's going to alleviate some of that stress that you might be having around this fear and doubt that you have. What happens when my client gets stuck? What am I going to do to help them? Or if you're in that situation right now. So my number one tip, let's get going. My number one tip is what we want to always do with our clients is to assess their readiness for change. So what we're doing is we are taking our client on a journey of making lifestyle and behavioral change. That's really what we're doing. And we really need to assess, are they ready? So there's this readiness for change model, I guess, out there in the world that I know is not taught in all coaching schools. I did not learn this at IIN. I learned it in a different coach training, a wellness coach training that I did through Real Balance Global Wellness. And I know that readiness for change is also a big part of the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches exam. I'm preparing to sit for that now. And so it is a big part, I know, going forward for a lot of coach training programs, because it really helps us understand if our client's ready. Because we all know that if we're not ready to make a change, we're probably going to be stuck. We're not going to move forward. So it's such an important integral piece of our coaching process to assess our client's readiness for change. So it sounds really simple in its idea that if our client's not ready, they're not going to make change, they're going to be stuck, and they're not going to move forward. And there's actually 6 stages to this readiness for change, or the process of change, stages of change, if you will. And taking action is actually number 4. So there's 3 steps before we get to actually taking action. So if you are finding that your client is stuck, maybe you've just jumped right into action steps. Maybe the client came right in and they were excited and keen to get going. So in your first session, they have a list of action steps and they're jumping in. But as you realize, as they keep coming back, they're not making progress, they're not taking the action steps, they're not doing their homework. So maybe they weren't ready to change. Maybe they are at an earlier stage in the change process. So I want to just give you the 6 stages of change first so that you understand them and have them. We have pre-contemplation, which is, the client hasn't even thought about making change yet. They're unaware that they need to make any changes. The second step is contemplation. So they are actually thinking about making a change. They've given it a little bit of thought. The third step is preparation. So they're actually taking some steps to prepare to make the change. Maybe they're finding more information, they're doing some research, they're putting things into place to prepare for the change. The fourth step is action. So we know what that looks like. They're actually taking action and working toward those goals. Number 5 is maintenance. So that's all about maintaining the changes that they've already made in their life. And number 6 is termination or adoption. So they've really adopted those changes as part of their lives. So I won't get into all of these right now and how we work through them, but I really want you to know that depending on where your client is when you assess the readiness for change, that's going to depend on how you coach them. So you're going to coach somebody differently at each of these stages. So that's why it's so important. And the big one here is that if your client hasn't gone through pre-contemplation, contemplation, and the preparation phase, and you've got them jumping right into action, that could be a big reason why they're stuck. The other thing I wanted to do is share with you a really great book, and I hope this is coming across right here today. So thanks, Maria, if you're listening, for the tip on how to have my book show up in the right way. So this is sort of the Bible when it comes to readiness for change and the stages of change. So James Prochaska, Di Clemente, and Norcross were psychologists who developed this process around change. So this is a great book to have in your coaching toolkit, Changing for Good. I've also just ordered Prochaska's latest book, which is Changing to Thrive, or Change to Thrive, or Thriving to Change. Anyway, it's something like that. But a really good book if you want to learn more about this stages of change process. So let's move on to tip number 2. You really want to explore with your client their future vision, their ideal scenario. So if they're stuck, perhaps you haven't explored with them enough around where they want to go, right? With our clients, we always know we want to assess where they are today, and then we want to have them look forward to where they want to go in the future. So this is their future vision for their health and well-being. This is the ideal scenario that they imagine for themselves. It's their big intention. And what this piece is really going to do, it's going to provide the motivation for your client to want to make the change, because you're going to spend time with your client really exploring, What does it look like once I've made these changes? What does that future state bring to my life? What are going to be the benefits? How am I going to feel once I reach that? So this is all about the motivation for change. That's why we have our clients look to that vision, set a big overarching intention. So that they have the motivation. And what you're going to do as their coach, on the days that they are feeling stuck, when they aren't moving forward, you're going to remind them of the why. Why do they want to make this change? You're going to remind them of all the good things that are going to become, happening in their life, that are going to come to fruition once they make these changes. So that's the tip number 2. Really make sure you're really exploring with your client the vision, their intention, their future state, and the ideal scenarios. If they have that motivation to make the change. Because if they don't have the motivation, they're probably going to be stuck and not move forward. My number 3 tip is help your client explore their past experiences. So, maybe your client is in this place where they're feeling stuck. Maybe they have failed a lot in the past, but maybe for those reasons, they don't really believe in themselves. So they haven't really developed enough sort of self-efficacy, which is their real belief in themselves that they can make these changes. So they haven't developed that yet because they haven't had some great experiences. So what you want to do is really ask the client and explore with them, well, when in the past have you made change? When have you overcome challenges? When have you overcome those obstacles? What did you do in those times? What strengths and characteristics did you use to get through those times? And how can you draw on those past experiences and bring them into today? So this is about reflecting on the past, what they've overcome, what they've gone through, the strengths that they drew on, and how can they use those and bring them into today's situation around their health and wellness and where they're feeling stuck around moving forward. So really exploring those past experiences, and this is what I'm doing with my client right now who's stuck. We're going to look at, where in her life has she overcome things like this in the past, and what did she do in those moments? And it's been really, really eye-opening for her to be able to bring some of those other examples and experiences that she's had into our current situation. So a great question to ask your client here is, what have you done in the past when you felt stuck? When else have you been stuck and how did you move through it? Really great question for them to draw on their own experiences. So tip number 4 is really making sure that the client has a SMART goal and that their action steps are doable. So this all goes to the point of, if your client's overwhelmed, if they've taken on too much, if they've taken on this really huge stretch goal that's just too much for them right now, maybe that's why they're stuck, because they're feeling overwhelmed. So with goal setting, of course, we know SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, timely, and relevant. Got that in the wrong order, but you know what I mean. And so if the goal isn't right for the client, if it's not really specific, if we can't measure it in some way, if it's not attainable for the client or relevant to them right now, or even timely based on where the client is in their life, then chances are it's not the right goal for them. So whenever your client's feeling stuck, we always want to go back to the goal to make sure that the goal is right and that it wasn't faulty, because there could be something in there that is really keeping the client stuck and the reason why that they're not moving forward. So we never want to blame the client and saying, you're a failure and why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you, moving forward with your action steps? We always want to check back in with the goal first. Does this goal feel right for you? Is there passion around it? Are you really interested in working on this goal right now? Where's that motivation coming from? So always check back in with the goal, because maybe you've taken on too much. Maybe the client's overwhelmed. Maybe you really just need to break things down into some smaller, more tiny baby steps to get started. So that's number 4, ensure that the client has a SMART goal and really doable action steps. Tip number 5 is to really just explore and be with the client around this piece of what's getting in the way. So there are a lot of great questions that we can use, and as I said in the beginning, it really is our job to help our client notice and identify and see when they're stuck, to identify these patterns and habits that they might have, from past experiences. I always, get to the same place and then I get stuck. So it is our job to help them understand and notice that they're in this place of stuckness. So if they're not taking action, if they're not moving forward, simply explore that stuckness with them. Get curious. So there are a lot of great questions that we can use here to explore the stuckness, to really see what might be going on beneath the surface. So just things like, I'm noticing that you're not getting traction with this goal. Where do you feel stuck? What's getting in the way here? What is being stuck doing for you? So a lot of times, clients don't want to move forward. There's some benefit in staying at the current state, at where they are right now. So what is it doing for you to be stuck? What's the benefit in staying in this place? And then, of course, we want to ask, how is it holding you back? How is being stuck holding you back from where you want to be in the future? Really, really important question. We might also ask, where are you feeling challenged right now? Where's the rub? Where's the challenge? Where's the obstacle that's coming up for you? And also maybe, how are you getting in your own way? So, if we're feeling our clients stuck, they're not moving forward, we want to notice it, we want to name it, and we really want to explore this with the client, because once we go through all of this and explore with these questions, that can help the client in the future notice these patterns so that they don't get back to the stuck place so often, so that they can move forward toward their goals. So that was tip number 5. Tip number 6 is, if your client is feeling stuck, perhaps they really don't understand how the behavioral change process works. So this is a great bit of education that you can do with your client to really have them understand how this process works. That we actually, when we're making dietary, lifestyle, behavioral changes, we can anticipate that there are going to be some bumps along the way. So when we set off on, we set ourselves a goal and we set ourselves to move forward towards some future state, we know that it's not going to be just one foot in front of the other until we get there. It's not going to be a perfectly straight line from beginning to end. Chances are the behavioral change process is more circular, right? We take a few steps ahead, we take a few sideways, we might take a few back, and then we get back to our starting place. But hopefully our starting place at that point is a few steps ahead of where we originally started. So it's really, really important to set our clients up for success in the beginning by letting them know this isn't going to be just a perfectly straight line. The process isn't going to go, just smooth from beginning to end. You're going to have some bumps along the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to plan for those. We're going to anticipate those challenges. You're going to think about what are all the things that can get in your way. And then we're going to do some planning around that. We have some contingency plans. We've got some plan Bs so that we have some action steps and goals that you can work towards even when those obstacles come up. So we know to expect them. So this part of really educating your client up front about how this process is going to go so that they're not surprised and shocked when the roadblocks happen, then you're both on the same page. You're both in alignment with how this is going to go. So that's tip number 6. Really explain to your client up front, set them up for success by explaining that the behavioral process is not a straight line, it's more a circular process, that they are going to anticipate and expect those bumps along the way, and you're going to help, move them through those once they get there. So that's number 6. Tip number 7 is to support your client with some tracking tools. So if you're not at the point right now where you're actually bringing some tracking tools into your coaching process with your clients, this is a really great thing to bring in, because tracking is a really important part of the behavioral change process. By tracking, your client will be able to see their progress along the way. They're going to notice some things. It really helps with awareness. So it could be anything from your client keeping a food diary or a food journal. It could be just tracking how many days a week they exercise, how many days a week they do their meditation. It could be planning out sort of their meal planning process for the week. So lots of different ways we can track. Tracking can be as simple as having a calendar on the wall. They could track things in a journal. They could track in their day timer, their day planner. And also there's all kinds of apps these days where people can track everything under the sun. So, it's really important to explore with your client so that they can find the tracking tool for them. So I just want to check my notes here to see if there's anything I missed. So tracking can be a really good accountability tool as well, because everything's written down in black and white. So when your client comes back next week and they say, I'm really stuck, I've been eating so well, but the scale hasn't shifted. And, we don't really want to be focusing on weight loss goals, but that's just a simple example. So you can look at their food diary, in black and white and say, well, I'm noticing every afternoon, you're having one of those big fancy sugary lattes from Starbucks and a, giant head-sized cookie. So it's there in black and white. You'll be able to see. So this is really great because it can help your client avoid that self-deception. Because a lot of times in our minds, we think we're doing really, really well. But when we're tracking, when we're mapping things out, when we're doing those food journals and diaries, we can see in black and white what the client actually did. And so it provides that self-accountability for them. So tracking is really, really important. And like I said, if you haven't worked that into your coaching process, it's a great tool to bring in. And again, can help when your client is stuck because they're going to be able to see the progress. It's really about tracking those milestones. So yeah, I might not have gotten to the gym 6 times this week, but I got there 4, so I can give myself a check mark for that. Right? So you want to celebrate those little wins, and tracking can really help you see those little shifts, those achievements, those steps along the way. So that's number 7, support your client with some tracking tools to help move them through those places where they might be stuck. Tip number 8 is to explore what might be hindering them in their environment. So we always have to look at the environment with our clients, the people, the places, and the things that might be getting in their way, or the things that aren't supporting their health and wellness journey. So all the people, who might not be supportive, or all the people who could be supportive. So look to see if there's anything there that might be keeping them stuck. We want to look at the environment. So, is your client's kitchen set up to really help them, eat healthier foods? What about their workplace? Are all their coworkers going out for fast food every day at lunch, and the client really wants to bring their homemade leftovers from the night before. So we really want to look at the people, places, and things that might be holding the client back or keeping them stuck. That's a really important tool that you might have just overlooked. It's just a place that we sometimes don't think about, but check in with your client. What in your environment, those people, places, and things might be getting in your way, might be an obstacle towards your progress and keeping you stuck. So tip number 9 is it could be a time management issue. So this is, again, a big one with busy people. Is your client always saying, I don't have time for my health and wellness? I really thought I could do it this week, but I just got too busy. I didn't find the time. They're not actually putting their action steps into their calendar and blocking time to work on it. So we really want to explore this sort of area around time. We also know that if, a client says, well, I'm too busy to do that, they're making a conscious choice, right? That's a conscious choice. They're choosing something over their health and well-being. So they're really choosing that over it, and they're not making their health and wellness a priority. So really exploring with your client, is it a time management issue? Perhaps you'll have to support your client in maybe doing a time audit. Maybe they track, what they spend their time on for a week, and then they come back to you and you explore and say, see if you can free up some time somewhere. Where are they wasting time, which they could be dedicating to their health and well-being. So this area of time management, how are they calendarizing things? How are they tracking things? All of that can really, really be supportive and helpful to keep your client moving forward toward their goals. So that was tip number 9. Tip number 10 is to really explore stories, limiting beliefs, and gremlin talk with your clients. So this is a big, big one that really does hold a lot of people back and really keeps us stuck, because we're stuck in stories, we're stuck in our doubts and fears, with your clients and around their health and wellness. It could be things like, I've failed so many times, I just can't do this, I'm never going to be healthy, I'm never going to lose the weight, I'm just not dedicated to my health. And these are all just stories your client is telling yourself. They come from the ego, they come from fear, and they aren't true. So, there are so many different strategies that you could use to help your client work through some of these stories and those limiting beliefs and identifying their gremlins. And I think for today, what I really want to say is simply by naming them and noticing that the client has these stories, you're saying, I hear that might be a gremlin voice. Am I speaking to your gremlin right now, or am I speaking to you? We just really want to start listening for these stories and limiting beliefs and gremlin voices, and really name them, notice them, and point them out to your client so that they can be aware that these aren't truths about themselves, that these are really just that ego and coming from that place of fear. So by naming them, by noticing them, we can reduce some of the grip that those voices have on us. It can really start to take some of the power out of them. So, learning a strategy to actually work through some of these is a great additional tool to have in your toolbox. I'm not going to get into all of those today, but just, really, even if you can notice them with the client, name them, and that can sort of, shine the spotlight on them a little bit and hopefully reduce some of that power that they have over your client to keep them stuck. So those were the 10 tips. Now I want to share with you just 2 bonus tips because there's just too much good information and I couldn't just stop there. So number 11 bonus tip is, does your client actually have the skills, abilities, and resources to make the changes or to take the action steps or to work toward your goal? To work toward their goal. Of course, we believe that the client is naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. They have the answers inside of them. However, they might not have all the abilities and skills and knowledge to actually make the change. So we really want to help the client identify if there are any gaps. What don't they know? What skills don't they have? What research do they need to do? What more information do they need to gather? So really, really important that you're not overlooking any gaps that the client might have. So even though the client has the answer inside of them, they might not have all of the knowledge, the skills, and the resources, if that makes sense. So you would work with your client to help them figure out how are they going to gain, the knowledge, the resources, or the abilities to actually make the changes. So that's an important one that, sometimes we overlook. We don't think, well, maybe they actually don't know how to make this change. So that's tip number 11, bonus tip. And my final tip, my tip number 12 is actually for you, the coach, because I know how frustrating and discouraging and disappointing this can be if you're not able to help your client move through a phase, a time when they're stuck. You can really start to, question your skills as a coach. So I really want you to, hold and know and be just really lovingly detached to the outcomes with your client. So this goes back to the coach mindset, our coach approach, how we show up as a coach. We absolutely love our clients. We want them to succeed. We want them to achieve those goals and get to that, vision that they have for their future. But we can't take that on. We're not responsible for them. We can't take it personally. So this line, we want to be lovingly detached to the outcomes. Love up your client, cheer them on, do all of these tips that I've shared with you today to help them be successful, absolutely. But we can't take it on as our responsibility. So we don't get attached to the outcomes. We're not responsible for their journey, and we really do have to remember that we're here to support and serve them. This is their journey. The coaching is here for them. And so it's really about, the coaching relationship is empowering them to have this journey of self-discovery so that they can make change and grow. So we're holding space for them, absolutely. We're being and coming from that loving, empathetic, compassionate place with all the tools and resources that we have to support our clients, but we also can't feel responsible for them. So, it kind of is a little bit about, it's about the journey, not the destination. It's about what is the client going to learn about themselves along the way, about why they get stuck and how they get stuck and what's getting in their way. Explore all of that. That's really, really valuable and useful work for you to do with your client. But we can't force our way through it. We can't force the client to go through, a doorway that they're not ready to go through. So just really wanted to remind you of that sort of basic coaching principle. Be lovingly detached to the outcomes. Do everything that you can in your role as coach to support the client, but you're not responsible for them or the outcomes. So, couple final points. I have one more book that I want to share with you. I've shared this one before. It's Quantum Coaching Questions by Marilena Minucci. She's a wonderful coach, mentor, and teacher. And she actually has an entire section here, if you can see that, she has 30 questions to support your client when they are stuck or self-sabotaging. So I wanted to give that as an additional resource to add to your collection. Some really powerful high mileage questions there. So I hope that these tips have been really helpful for you today. I know that they've been so helpful for me as I've, guided many clients through places where they've been stuck. And what I wanted to say is these tools and strategies are absolutely here, for you when you need them, when your client is actually feeling stuck throughout the process. But what I really encourage you to do, and I mentioned this at the beginning, was really work, all of these tips and strategies into your coaching process, into your methodology. So much of this, I just really build it into my coaching process. We talk a lot about all of these strategies, up front in those first few foundational sessions with the client, because all of these, bits and pieces are going to help set your client up for success in the beginning. So if you've already thought about these tools and strategies, you've put them in place, you've educated your client, you've explained the process, and you've included some of these tools and techniques along the way, then hopefully that, will help to avoid some of those places when your client gets stuck. But just know that they will get stuck and you can absolutely be there to support them through it. There's a lot of growth and learning that happens when the client can actually really get curious and explore what's getting in the way. So hope those were helpful. If you have any questions at all, please post them in the comments below. As well, if there are any of these tips that you'd like further explanation on, I would be happy to pick any of these up and do a future Facebook Live on them. As well, if you're not yet in my Facebook group for health coaches, I would really love to invite you to come over and join us there. It's for health coaches who want to build their core competencies as a coach, to build their skills, and really with the end goal of building their confidence as a coach so that you can put yourself out there in the world and do good work as a coach. So have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time. Bye for now, everyone.